Welcome to the Masters in Motion podcast, where we empower Masters athletes to reach their full potential. Join us as we delve into the world of CrossFit and showcase the strength, resilience, and determination of Masters athletes, because we love this sport. I'm Jason Grubb with Rick Stevenson. Hey, Rick, how was your Memorial Day weekend, my friend?
Well, Mr. Jason, pretty good, gotta say. Just was telling you, we got blessed with 72 degrees, no humidity, sunshine the whole time. Not a cloud in the sky. Here in Northeast Ohio, it really felt like it was the kickoff of summer. So we tried to be outside as much as possible, and that included Murph.
You did Murph. How was Murph?
Yeah.
Let's just jump into Murph.
Yeah.
We've got news, but since we're on the topic of Memorial Day weekend and Murph,
Yeah.
I did not do it, but I'll tell you why in a second. I want to know how your Murph went, and besides amazing weather. Your hands survived. Body survived.
Did not tear. Yep, they survived. They survived. It was a real good experience. Great atmosphere. I think we had. I didn't post a picture of this, and I should repost from our gym. But I think we had about 50 strong that were there. That it was just great to be with the community. From the competitor side, where I normally will hang out a little bit more. Owner brought us all together. 2 years ago, last year I didn't do it because of semifinals the following week.
It was right. Yeah, it was literally the Monday after our semifinals.
You had semifinals. Yeah, you had semifinals that weekend. I was the following. That's right. They split the age group up. But then for 2020 and 2021, did it at my friend Mike's house. And I enjoy doing that. And he and I were going back and forth. We decided that we should do it again later this year at his house, just to keep the tradition up. So I'll complain about how sore I am later this year.
Fair enough.
Between competitions, one more time.
I was telling you, I did not do officially the workout yesterday. I'm planning to do it on June 10th. Actually, is a little bit of a strategy, thinking that this could be something we could see at the games this year for Masters athletes. I think that'd be really interesting. And again, who knows? But I did a significant amount of Murph prep yesterday, where after I did all the math, I did more than actual Murph yesterday with regards to the volume. And again, gratefully, my hands are intact and they're quite sore. Especially after the training that I did today with more work that involved my hands. But I every time I do that kind of volume or that kind of work or incorporate push-ups into a workout, I'll just say whenever I incorporate push-ups, I am sore in new ways every time because we just don't do that many. Right. You know what I mean?
Nope. You throw a weight vest on. And even though you might have prepped with pull-ups and push-ups, it's just a whole new level of soreness. And I've done my share of complaining, and I shouldn't, but it's what I like to do when I'm really sore. So
yeah, we're sore and achy,
but we do it for the right reason. That's the most important thing. We remember those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice and learn that it's not a reason to complain. I'm just complaining about the soreness of my body right now, but not. And I cherish the opportunity to do Murph every single year.
And it is just such a huge amount of effort. There are lots of hero workouts, and every one of them is so challenging. Murph is its own. It has its own place, and the thing I really love about it is it's gone way beyond the CrossFit community. To all kinds of different athletes do Murph. I actually saw that Mark Zuckerberg did Murph with a vest. He said he did it in 39 minutes, which is an exceptional time. Honestly, it's a great time. So we can't judge what those reps looked like because I don't think he posted a video of him doing it, but he did say his time. And if that's true, Zuckerberg is a pretty fit human being.
Let's get Andrew Hiller on.
Right? Let's get the Batman on Mark Zuckerberg. Let's get him called out. I'm sure that's going to go over really well.
Fantastic.
Just fine.
Fantastic. No.
Well, you've got some news, and I thought I just lead you into the news you've got. CEO Don Faul.
Well,
he had some comments on the North America West Semifinals.
Yeah, he did a press conference there. I picked this up this morning. He's been on the job for 9 months already. That's kind of hard to believe. He's certainly kept from my opinion and my standpoint, I think he's kept a pretty low profile.
Yeah.
But maybe that's by design. There was one comment which I will read to you here at the end that does involve, I think, the games or the sports side of it, which is important. But he talked about there's a goal CrossFit has by 2030 of having 30 million CrossFit athletes. So I don't know where they're exactly at now. I think we know the affiliate numbers. That's pretty well publicized. But how does he see the brand getting there? He cited a couple of things like due to their in-house efforts, they've seen a pretty big increase in traffic to the main site, which almost for a while I thought with all the redesigns and what they were going through kind of lost its luster of being, it's a lot how a lot of people started out is let's go to
Right.
main site. I
Right.
don't know if you
Well,
might have,
I didn't spend a lot of time
looked at
historically
that
on
site
Mindsight,
like,
but I agree. Yeah, I have looked at it, and it is, yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff there, and I think it's getting organized. Every time I go there, I'm fairly unfamiliar with what's going on because I spend more time on the CrossFit Games site.
layout, design. Yeah,
Yeah, it's everything.
correct. That's
That's a
bookmark.
it is bookmark. It's a big number, 30 million
That's
CrossFitters. However they
absolutely
can count that, but that's a big number.
by 2030. So
Okay.
6.5 years. And another way he's going to get there is again through coach, more development of coaches. So there's even a talk about the foundations course, which I just learned about here. It's a 1 day course, and it's going to be focused on athletes that aren't ready to take level 1 yet. So they still want to push level 1 as really that introductory to the methodology. I don't want to call it to the training, and
Right.
level 2 after you've started to actually have hands-on coaching, they encourage level 2. I know
Yep.
that, but this foundations they think can put their arms around a larger group of athletes and move the numbers that way. But the comment here, and I'll just finish up with this. This was interesting. He was asked about the layoffs, which I know we talked about. First, the layoffs from HQ, and then a couple of weeks later, we heard about the layoffs at Noble. All know the difficult economic times that a lot of companies are experiencing right now, and those were sizable numbers in proportion to their overall workforce. His decision, he said, I acknowledge coming into last year, we took a look at a lot of our priorities, and I made the decision to reallocate some of our focus. Running these events takes, and he's speaking at the semifinals, so you have to, in context, running these events takes an extraordinary amount of work. When I looked at the overall allocation and the amount of time and resources we were putting towards sport, aka the games track, I felt we needed to adjust. So that begs the question, what are you going to see, come August? How much are they stressing the existing staff in order to do more with less to prepare for Madison? Because really they have, the die's been cast. They have one more week of semifinals. I know they're in Berlin, and I forget where the other one is. I should have that. Asia. So they're in Seoul and they're in Berlin. So that's done, and those will be handled. But now the push will be to Madison. So with these staff reductions and this comment from him, very curious.
I always find it
you'll be able to compare and contrast.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been there. I've been to the games a number of years. This will be my 5th year, so I'll have lots of data to compare. And I think about CrossFit as an organization. When when Glassman sold the organization to Eric Rosa, it wasn't a sale to Eric specifically. He happened to be the person organizing. But I listened to an interview that was done with the person that is working on the CrossFit book, which is a book with Greg Glassman, really the foundations of CrossFit, kind of going through his whole life and his experience with CrossFit and where he's going and what he's doing. Anyway, it was a long form interview. And I discovered that CrossFit was bought essentially by a large group of investors. It's an investment company that essentially owns CrossFit now. And so when they buy a company for, I think they said $200 million, they're looking to get a big return on that. And 30 million CrossFitters out there going through courses, getting their foundations course, their level 1 course, their level 2 course, affiliate fees that go into that system. Like, this is an organization that isn't just based on the passion of one man, which was what CrossFit originally was. That Greg Glassman was a passionate human being who was just a visionary and was, probably at the time not great at running an organization. That wasn't his skill set. He was a visionary, right? And now we have a CEO. Go ahead.
It grew around and despite him.
Despite him. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say it grew around him and despite him. Yes.
Yep.
The explosion of popularity.
Yep.
It couldn't help but grow. And whether at the end of that, he didn't want the games even. he didn't even care about the games, allegedly.
No.
I
And
mean,
that
it
no,
was
it's
methodology and
yeah.
training people.
And I wonder if, that was his vision. His vision was helping people, period. And the games
Hmm.
was not part of that. The games had grown into its own thing, but he couldn't sell the games. Apparently, there were talks to try to
Hmm.
spin off the games from CrossFit so it could be its own entity, but no one wants to buy it because that part's not profitable except as a potential marketing arm investment
Hmm.
for CrossFit. And I wonder if the new company or the new ownership looks at the games, that looks at semifinals and sees this huge capital and time expenditure and is trying to figure out how to get a return on that investment. Does the games, does
Right.
semifinals, does this entire production push the entire company towards that 30 million CrossFitter goal? And if it doesn't,
Yeah.
they'll have to figure it out. And for athletes like us, that we really love the games, we love the benefit that CrossFit gives us as being healthy athletes, healthy human beings. But deep down, you and I are like
Correct.
competitive athletes, so we love the games and we're fans of that sport and the methodology as well.
It's
But
our sport.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's I don't golf. I don't golf. I don't bowl. I can't throw a football. I can't throw a baseball. I'm not doing any of these things. I'm a 47-year-old CrossFit athlete,
I,
and honestly, I'm a celebrity in a very small niche of a very small sport, very very small, and that doesn't translate to anything else, So
you said golf. Can I say one thing here on this? This ties back into Murph. I did hit a bucket of balls yesterday after post Murph. I would not recommend that. It. I sent you the.
you did.
It did not work out. I love to play golf, but the arms were not working at all,
No,
and I couldn't imagine if I tried it again today. It would
no,
feel even worse. But
I
that's another story. That CrossFit is my sport too, and being as old as I am, to say I still have a sport
yeah,
is rewarding. It's something I care and passionate about. But I understand where our sport evolved from, and that's from the
yeah,
methodology, and
yeah,
we can't forget that. And I know it's a business to them. I thought the comments were interesting. You'll be able to compare and contrast differences if you see
yeah,
in Madison,
yeah,
in terms of boots on the ground there and responsiveness by the employees. I know a
yeah,
lot of that's volunteer, but still,
yeah.
it'll be very
And
interesting.
I will say that the one thing that I do still see as a games athlete and one who's fairly public, I've put myself out there on YouTube, on Instagram, is that every day I get new messages from people who have started CrossFit because of the journey that I've shared. They're inspired. So I do want to argue in my own small experience that I think that guys like you, guys like me, guys with gray hair, men and women, of course, that do these things are an inspiration to the demographic, the individuals around us, to get up and do something. They see us doing stuff. I was actually in the middle of doing wall balls yesterday against the wall of my RV. So 10-foot wall balls. I know the height on my RV. So I'm doing wall balls on my RV. And some guy just walks over and he's like, while I'm doing wall balls, he's like, hey, this is a great setup. I'm like, bro, thanks. I'm trying to keep count in my head as I'm counting to 21. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
please feel free to take a look around. I'm right in the middle of this thing, but I would talk afterwards. But we just by our lifestyle, by
They
our
don't
online
understand.
presence. Yeah, they don't know. He doesn't know why wouldn't this guy stop? He kept doing wall balls. Anyway, I will be curious. We'll see what happens. I'm hopeful that
Right.
the games continues to help grow the company of CrossFit. I do believe in it. I love it, and I hope that continues. Anyway, all right. Next piece of
Likewise.
news, Rick.
Yes, just a quick shout out to the ladies. There were the ladies at North America West Semifinal. One, two, three, four age group athletes represented themselves very well. They had two of the ladies already have punched their tickets to the games via the semifinals for age group. Obviously, China Cho being one of them and Jen Ryan being the other. They, through the process, though, from the individual side, qualified for the semifinal, and four of these ladies decided to compete. All four finished the weekend. China had the best finish at 24th. Jen Ryan was 47th. I want to get the names right here because it was Chelsea Nicholas. And Kelly Clark. Chelsea Nicholas finished 25th, and Kelly Clark finished 38th. So
Wow.
when you think the high caliber of individual women there at North America West, including a couple of 17-year-olds,
Right.
they started the article out with 17-year-old Olivia Kerstetter and 42 or 43-year-old Jen Ryan. I mean,
That's
it's hard
insane.
to believe they're on the same competition floor
Right.
and basically hanging with each other, relatively for the weekend. So it just shows you, that the age group, we have to draw the line with the numbers at some point, but just to say 35 and up, they're still incredibly viable athletes that can compete at the highest level, as evidenced by this past weekend. So that was fun to see from a master's and age group.
Absolutely. I thought that was really fun. I love the weekends of semifinals. Every night I get to sit down and watch the replays. I just love it. I get to binge watch CrossFit. It's just silly.
Exactly.
But again, I love this stuff. And I'll give a shout out. I did really enjoy when I was in Mayhem. I got to train quite a bit with Bailey Rail, and she was out there competing for a spot, and she really crushed the last day, particularly the last event, and it wasn't looking good.
Yeah,
and she came in 9th out of 10, I think, that were able 8th or 9th, something like that. But the fact that she went from 21st to a games spot on the last day was just huge.
Right.
So I was cheering her on virtually and spending the entire day trying not to see anything on social media. So I didn't know if she made it or not. So when I watched the replay that night, I got to see in my own version of live, like, wow, she pulled that off. In heat, she was like, she was in the fourth heat, I believe, fourth or fifth heat. I can't remember.
I was going to say she wasn't in the last heat, right?
She was not. No, she was in the fifth heat. They reshuffled.
So she had to set the times to beat both of those event 6 or test 6 and test 7. Okay.
And so I knew her time, and I was cheering for however many athletes. I was like, okay, now we need like this many athletes to get to between her and this person. And, the announcers were focused on who was in 10th place and 9th place at the time, like those people that were right on the bubble. But what ended up happening is Bailey just usurped. She just jumped right over those guys. Yep. And it was fun. I love cheering on someone who I know. And I will say that just for fun, the one of the last days I was at Mayhem before we left on our travels, I was doing a little bit of accessory work at the end with Bailey, and it involved like 30 toes to bar, something on a bike, and then an L sit on the rings. And she was like, Jason, you want to jump in? I was like, heck yes, I do. Toes to bar, yes. And so we did 3 or 4 rounds of this thing, and we did the first round unbroken of toes to bar, and then it just became, well, we're not breaking now. I'm not breaking. Are you breaking? No. Are you breaking? No, I'm not breaking. So you know how that goes when you've got a partner. You're like, okay. So when I saw her not break on toes to bar, in my mind, I was like, yeah. She's probably imagining that I was racing her in that moment. She's probably thinking Grub would hold on. No, she wasn't thinking that. But I wanted to think that she was thinking that.
No,
so,
she knew what her capacity was.
She knew what she could do. Actually, when I was going,
watch her heat.
Yeah.
I was going to say she went unbroken on her 3 rounds of 20 toes to bar in that last event.
Yes.
And so to ask her to do that was probably not, even under fatigue, and it was a short-ish type of test. She easily had the capacity to go 20.
That is her jam.
As you've seen before now.
Yeah, it was amazing. I knew she could. So I was like, and it's funny when you're watching people do toes to bar, you could see, you're like, she's going to break. Because you could just see the fatigue on round 8, 9, 10, the way the knees come up and the kick at the end. Yeah. You're like, she's going to break. She's going to break. And you see Bailey and you're like, oh, she's got it. Like the rhythm is good. The movement is good. The whole system is just working. So yeah, it was really fun. Really fun. So semifinals, one more week of semifinals.
Excellent. Good for her.
We'll see what turns up next week.
Cheering on the men's field in Berlin in Europe.
Yes.
Certainly stacked. I would say that's headlined by BKG. He'd have to get hurt not to sail through.
Right.
I just think he's on another level. I know one of the Dukic brothers would beg to differ with that. I forget which one. It would be Lazar.
Yep.
But BKG is just another level. And then I think everybody, now that Mal O'Brien is not competing, I think the world will be watching it's test event, I keep saying, it's test 6, Laura Horvath, and the wall-facing handstand push-ups.
Right. Can she
I
do
know
it?
They're not deficit,
Yep.
but most athletes I've seen have taken breaks. They might have gone 10 and 10 or 11-9 or something like that. just kind of pacing themselves for those legless rope climbs to come after that. But boy, will she be watched, and they'll be
Oh yeah.
scrutinized, because that might be the only thing that's holding her back from winning everything.
Very, very true. And I don't know how she is on legless rope climbs. I'm sure she's fine. In fact, yeah, I'm sure she's fine.
I'm pretty sure she's actually, yeah.
Have
She used
you
to be a
tried?
rock climber, right?
No, that's
So I
right.
would
That's right.
imagine
She's
her
her
grip is,
pulling strength is fine. Have you tried the
yeah.
L-sit rope climb up with the descent down legless? Yeah.
No,
Oh no.
last week we messed around with it.
Yeah.
I tried the L sit up, but I came down, did not come down
Like a
legless. But
rock.
I know of some athletes out there, masters who are practicing it. So,
Yep.
again, I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibilities.
No.
Maybe just L sit legless up, and then you come down. We'll see what the games have in store for you, but
Yeah, it's an interesting to
I wouldn't be
speculate.
shocked if we saw a lot of those things.
I agree. I really agree. And I think that legless down is the game changer. It's so hard. My first attempt was a disaster. And then my body adapted to it, like it kind of figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
The first attempt I did was like I don't know about you as a master's athlete, but my first rope climb feels like garbage. I feel rickety.
Mm-hmm. Right.
My shoulders want to snap up. Everything feels bad. Then it starts to warm up and it feels better.
Grip kicks in.
Yeah.
Really do. The grip feels better the second or third when I have to do legless than the first one. The first one I go up and I'm like, I'm not going to make this. I'm going to lose it. And then, suddenly then I'm like, I know how many pulls I need. I feel it kick in.
Yeah.
It does. We'll see how many listeners even use this as a tip, but one of the men in the final heat, it could have been Fakowski, I'm not sure, smart enough to have the rope on his outside and strong enough also that it wasn't centered. But he did that allegedly or apparently so that the rope would not be between his legs, and he would not run the risk of accidentally pinching it and causing a no rep. So he climbed it with the rope over his hip.
Yeah.
On the side, which I think was a whole. I don't know if you've ever played.
I've done that.
I have not.
Whenever I've done leg L-sit, I've always had the rope to the side. It's fine. It's totally fine. It doesn't change anything except you can't squeeze the rope with your legs.
Okay.
And I feel like that's a really great strategy. I saw one person get away with a pretty rough rep where they squeeze their legs on the very last second before they touch their hands below the red line, and the judge didn't see it, and I was like, that was blatant. It didn't matter because it was earlier heat, but I was like, ooh, that is tough. It's so tempting when you're scared to just squeeze those legs real quick. And I mean, I remember at the games in 2021, we had legless rope climbs with deadlifts. And I remember on my last rep, I was risking it all to get that one last pull. And if I would have, for some reason, missed my hand or not touched just right, that metal beam or whatever we had to touch, if I didn't touch the beam, my legs were probably wrapped around that rope, a couple of milliseconds after I touched, because I was at the very end of my capacity. But I was very careful. Like, I am going to make a sound when I hit this thing, and then my legs are going to grab this thing because I'm going to die if I don't.
Correct. And I'm not waiting for the judge to say good.
No,
I'm going to hit it and clamp because I do not want to come crashing to the ground.
Yeah, no, it is going to be so clear. I'm not going to make anything. So let's move on. We've got a couple of things that we wanted to share as our primary, even though, we chip through the news and we end up having these wonderful conversations. But you did a bit of a deep dive on the history of age groups at the games, and you haven't shared with me any of this. So I'm really interested in what you have picked up about the history of age groups at the game.
Well, just some interesting couple of things here. And I promise I'm not going to go too in depth, but this is the stuff I do like to geek out about. Again, I mentioned this last week, thanks to CrossFit putting some more details and meat behind the game site. You now can look at leaderboards, individuals going all the way back to the first games of 07, and masters. And we said that last week that the first time masters had an age group was 2010. So not only can you see the field, the results, but now you can find the workouts too, which I think is really interesting.
Yes.
So,
wow.
And again, in a couple of weeks, we'll talk about here on this podcast what our guesses are going to be for maybe some movements, what you would see in Madison. But real briefly here, so 2010 was the first year they had age groups. And I think I said this, so this is not a fair question for you, but there were only 50 to 54 men and women, one age category. That was it.
Huh.
Now, the interesting thing is, can you tell me how many athletes they had of men and how many women in that 50 to 54 category?
Wow.
This was
I bet they
this
had.
is something I think we want them to land on now.
Right. Did they have 15? Did they have 15 per?
I'm leading you.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. Yes.
Wow.
There, I'm leading the witness. Yeah, they had 15 each. And, I know the number 15 has come up, even if you're not going to go to 20, back to 20 again, why not 15? So
Yeah.
they had 15, and they only had 3 events. They had Nancy, established a max deadlift, and Fran.
Wow.
3 events, pretty simple.
Man.
And no cut. That was
Yep.
it. It seemed like it was maybe could have been technically one day. Maybe they split it up into 2 days. I wasn't sure about that. And then 2011 is when they had a real large expansion. They went masters. They had age groups of 45 to 49. They started that, and then they went 55, 59, and 60 plus. They expanded the field to 20 athletes. They had 5 events, and this is the first year that they actually instituted a cut down to just 8. So 12 athletes, at least 12, or if there were still 20 competing. 12 got cut after 4 events, and then 8 did the final. And then the last thing I'll say on the age groups, again, I will not go every year, I promise. In 2014, they started the 40 to 44 category for both men and women. So that was 2014. And these games were all out at Carson at the StubHub Center. But what I want to say, interestingly enough, here is 2011 workouts. There were 5. Pretty simple, like a simple chipper. Well, I'm sure it wasn't simple, but establish a 1-rep max clean and jerk, a master's final event, which was kind of interesting, row 500 meters, bike 500 meters, 15 burpee box jumps, and then 120-foot carry. They don't give me the description of what you're carrying or whatever that is.
Carrying
that
something.
was the final. So a muscle up thruster workout, which interesting, not far off of what we saw a little bit here in semifinals. But for you, Jason Grubb, you were 45 to 49 that year. Here's what you would have done. 3 rounds for time of 4 muscle ups and 8 thrusters at 135 pounds. 4 and 8, 4 and 8, 4 and 8.
Wow.
That must have been, well, nowadays that would be an absolute all-out sprint.
Yes.
I'm sure 135 pounds thrusters for 45, and in fact 50 to 54 did it that year too. Would have been a bit slower. But the one that caught my attention was the last one. It was called overhead squat, push up, and get this, shuttle run.
Wow.
I did not remember this. Now, they're using a very generous term of shuttle run here because, listen to this. Here, Mr. Grubb, as 45-year-old, back then you would have done 21 reps of an overhead squat at 95 pounds.
Okay.
21 hand release push-ups. So age groups finally saw that after hand release had been introduced to the individual athletes a couple of years prior. And then 150-yard shuttle run. So it's a generous run.
Yes.
150 yards. Remember, they were at the track back then. That's where the age groups were. So could have been on the football field, could have been back, 3/4 the way and back. So that's 21, 150-yard shuttle run, then 15, 100-yard shuttle run, and 9, and a 50-yard shuttle run.
Wow.
So that was a 4-time event. So some interesting programming from way back when. And we'll talk over the next couple of weeks, the evolution, as we know, and then actually what you've lived the last couple of years. But it started in its infancy where we just took 2 girls and a max lift, and we called that the age group competition, to how intricate, just say, for example, last year was with all the moving parts that age groups had.
Oh, wow. This is going to be fun. I can't wait to hear the additional iterations, because once you get from 2014 to 2018, now that's where I enter, and I can tell you every event, 2018, 2019,
Absolutely.
2021, 2022. And I've never been disappointed with how my body has felt after the CrossFit Games. Every year it's been, because I feel like they've increased in everything so much over the years. Except I will say, I mean, 2018, I remember there was a workout there that we'll talk about this in the future, but one of the first day's workouts, in addition to a few other things, it had 100 dumbbell front rack squats, front squats, dumbbell front squats. Yeah. That put our legs Did I start to break up?
overhead squat,
No, no, I'm sorry.
overhead
It
squat
was
and
front
PS or
rack,
something like that.
front
Oh,
rack, dumbbell front rack. Why can't I say it?
that's right.
Front squats with dumbbells in the front rack position, and a total of
Front rack.
100 put our legs into such a severe deficit for the entire next 4 days. We were limping and hobbling.
Right.
It was something. Yeah, that's year one. Or 2018. 2018, we touched the obstacle course. If you can imagine, like how great
Correct.
was it
I
how
was
they
going to say.
started to incorporate a lot more for masters athletes later on. But these early years, wow,
Right.
to imagine that their first age group was 50 to 54 because there were probably guys 49 and younger that were like in the mix of the CrossFit Games at the time,
Yep.
like crazy,
Yep.
you know?
Some of the ages, there were certainly a lot of individual athletes that were in their 30s, if not later 30s,
Yeah, yeah.
competing right around that 08, 9, 10 time frame. But the fact how they've introduced all these other objects, you mentioned the obstacle course, you've run with a ruck.
Yep.
The weight vest has been used. You've carried yokes. Last year was the introduction of the swimming and ski event, which was the first time, I believe he said, age groups, and that includes teenagers as well, and individuals and teams. Everybody did the same basic workout.
Yeah, that was
So
amazing. That went off so
there's
well.
been this gradual building of what they've introduced age groups to.
Yeah.
And now I know we'll talk a few more things in the years to come, but boy, it started out certainly as a, hey, what do we do for age groups? Oh, let's just put these down. Nancy's a good test, incorporate some running, let's lift heavy, and hey, Fran's good. I'm sure everybody likes to be tested with Fran. Call it a year. Done.
Yeah. When we think about it in context of in the history of where we've come from, we can be grateful for the experience that CrossFit does provide for us as masters athletes, 35 to 39. There are 7 masters divisions, male and female. That's 14 total divisions that they do roll out the red carpet for us at the games. And I mean, I've had an amazing experience every year, from behind the scenes and athlete control to out on the field, to, 3 out of the 4 years, amazing coverage, on YouTube. So the only year that we didn't have any coverage was 2019. That was just a big transition year for CrossFit. But really, where we've come from 3 workouts in a parking lot to 14 divisions, and plus teenagers now, it's really amazing. And I oftentimes I've shared that, like, I wish they paid more for masters athletes. I still wish they did. I really wish they did. But I can't imagine the prize pool in 2010 to 2014 was much. The privilege of showing up was probably the prize.
The prize pool, think about it, for the elite individual athletes. Remember Graham Holmberg, when the year he won, it might have been a whole lot of Progenics, and it was a check for maybe $20,000 or $25,000 or something like that. Which, I mean, that was before Reebok. That was before the big sponsorship. So CrossFit was doing what they could with what they were afforded.
Yeah,
it certainly just shows you. I know Noble announced an increase in the prize purse for games this year last week, or something like that. Maybe about a 3% increase, I think, is what it worked out to across the board. So the little things count and add up, but boy, it's come a long way.
A long way. Well, we'll shift to our last topic of the day, and I think this is a fun one. So last week we sort of touched on how training is different from masters athletes to individual athletes, and we sort of touched on warm-ups last week. We'll visit that topic a number of times because I think we've got a lot to say about how we train in such a way that's different than younger athletes. We also want to touch on the themes around kind of what the internet has to say about CrossFit. And so we'll bounce around these topics over the year and mix them in. We don't want to get stuck on a topic for too long, so we'll just kind of pull these back. And but we were brainstorming today, what does the internet say about CrossFit? And there are a lot of criticisms about CrossFit that you can find online. There's a lot of positives, but I think that what we wanted to address was the negative things. And one of the things that often comes up about CrossFit is the risk of injury. Anybody who doesn't know CrossFit but is in the fitness industry, the number one thing they're going to say, chiropractors, physical therapists, all of them, is that CrossFit is, because of its high intensity nature and encouragement to push your limits, the potential for a higher risk of injury is there, especially for beginners or those with pre-existing conditions. That is just a blanket statement that you hear online. I can't tell you how many people I've heard that have said, "Well, I went to my doctor. My doctor said I should never, ever, ever do CrossFit again." And I'm just like, well, your doctor doesn't know what CrossFit is. But even taking a step back, this is a common thing out there. Have you run into that in your longer history than me, Rick?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and maybe not so much from the medical community, just uninformed, uninformed acquaintances. Why would you want to be doing that to yourself? Why would that? Boy, that looks dangerous. How do you do that? That's so dangerous.
Right.
Yet we're not in other sports like Olympic lifting or powerlifting. How about the number of injuries that occur on the soccer field? The number of lower leg injuries, concussions, children under 18 playing sports where concussions are a higher risk. Football, certainly soccer.
Yeah.
Some other ball sports, lacrosse, things like that. I mean, just because we're not involved in that, I would hope that those sports are also getting the same kind of knock that ours are.
Yeah.
But it seems a little unfair when it's coming from an uninformed source.
Right. And the uninformed source, I think one of the things that they look at is they look at something like what they see on TV. They see CrossFit on TV and they see people doing thrusters in a race or snatch ladders, which is insane, right? They see butterfly pull-ups. They see movements that are the most advanced elements of this sport of CrossFit. And yes, when you move into the sport of anything, in a competitive side of anything, you are putting yourself into a more riskier situation. So if you do triathlons for fun, running, swimming, biking, that's cute, and you do that. But if you get competitive in that and you start increasing your training volume, the potential for injury is exponentially higher. Same thing with CrossFit, same thing with football. Like if I were to say to a 40-year-old, mother of 4 kids, you know what, I want you to come on in and we're going to do what they do in the NFL. Like she would be like, no, I can't, I'm not doing what they do in the NFL. It's super dangerous. Well, yes, of course it is. So when you come into a CrossFit class, you're not going to do what you see at the CrossFit Games, just as an example. Like those are professional athletes.
Exactly.
Right. So,
yes. Yeah, I challenge those uninformed sources to come into a class and look at what's going on. And I would challenge them that they're not going to see what you're describing the professional CrossFit athletes are doing. Butterfly pull-ups are not often done.
Right.
Kipping pull-ups, after you've established and developed the strength needed for strict pull-ups, then you learn, to kip. And then the next iteration is the butterfly. The majority of your gym is going to be doing kipping pull-ups. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the form as long as it's done properly. And they're limiting themselves from injury by doing it, the technique that they've learned.
And yeah, you're right. There's the progression, and a good CrossFit coach, a good CrossFit gym is going to take people from that foundational level, that place where they have no experience whatsoever, and a good gym, a good coach is going to take a person and help them navigate all of these skill development in an appropriate way for that person. Now, my story or my experience was I went to a CrossFit gym and I started and I loved it, and I started going 6 days a week, just going full ham, full crazy, I'm all in. And it was, so 2 things that happened there. One, I wasn't at a really good gym. A really good gym would have told me to slow down, tap the brakes, buddy. Yeah, it's okay. Yep. It's okay. I see how excited you are about this. Let's go ahead and work on these foundational elements. And until we have these mastered, then we'll start to move up. I see how much you love this, and that's great. But 5 days a week is all we should see you here, Jason. And let's lighten up everything. And on the other hand, there is an element of personal responsibility where, yeah, in the first 2 weeks, I did hurt myself pulling a rower too hard. I bruised a rib because I was pulling on the rower so hard. Again, a good coach would be like, Jason, dude, calm down. Like you're hitting your chest with a rower, dial it down. But I think that I was responsible for my own behavior as well. So it's not just finding a good gym, it's also being smart and realizing that the runway that we have in front of us, regardless of whatever age you start, the runway is really long. And if you aspire to start CrossFit and get to the CrossFit Games, let's say that you just like, you drink the Kool-Aid, you're like, that's it, I just want to be a competitive athlete. The fun thing is, if you start at 38, you could go to the CrossFit Games at 45, and that would be just fine. You could work until you're 50 and go to the games, or 55. You could be in this sport for 13 years and get to the games as a healthy human being. You don't have to get there on year 1 or year 2 or year 3, because it's impossible and risky to try to go that fast. So the runway is long. Be patient, and with that, like, I think one of our number one, we talked about beginners last week. I think CrossFit for beginners. The number one advice is just don't get hurt. Like, that's it. If you could just not get hurt, you will last a long time in this sport or this training regimen. And so be smart. And
when you limit your time in the gym because you're battling an injury, just limits it just further impedes the progress that you're hoping to make.
Yeah.
Common sense.
So,
I'm glad you said personal responsibility. I think, you want to think that most individuals who step into a gym have that kind of sense about them to say, how much is too much.
Yeah.
They might have that governor in their head, that brake, to be able to hit the brakes. Maybe not everybody does. Again, that's where, good gyms with the coaching staff that's prepared, you've done some on-ramp classes, they keep eyes on you and they kind of know where you're at.
Yeah.
They're going to prevent that from happening. And then you marry that with, that self-regulation that you should have.
Yeah.
But you're looking at this long on-ramp of progress. And I think that's what we're all trying to achieve. I mean, no one comes in to the gym the first time and masters everything.
That's true. We talked about, before we jump on the show, we talked about an example I was thinking about when I owned a gym. I had one of my clients, his name was Bob. That was actually his name. So, Bob, if you're listening, you know what I'm about to say. But Bob got injured, and Bob developed shoulder pain and shoulder injury, and he ended up going to a chiropractor that said you should never CrossFit, never put any weight overhead. Well, I told Bob so many times, dude, we got to dial it back. We got to pull back that weight. That's too heavy to go overhead, because Bob didn't have the shoulder mobility. As a 65 plus athlete, he didn't have the shoulder mobility to really put a barbell overhead. If you put a barbell overhead, but you can't actually stack it on your skeleton in an appropriate way, you're putting yourself at risk. You're putting your shoulders at risk for injury. And honestly, that was me when I started CrossFit. I didn't have the shoulder mobility, and I did develop issues with my shoulders, which was really unfortunate, right? Yeah, I couldn't get my arms overhead. Eventually, I got my arms into a better position. Eventually, I've been able to develop the mobility required for all of the CrossFit movements, but it's taken me so much time. But Bob was relentless at just trying to do something RX. And, you do your best as a coach to try to help someone avoid injury. You do your best, but then it comes back to personal responsibility, Bob doesn't do CrossFit anymore. He does jujitsu now. So that's that. I mean, talking about nothing. It's not safer.
Oh, are you kidding me?
He's jujitsu. So,
oh my goodness.
The guy is 67 and he's doing jujitsu. He's
active.
moving around. He's
That's
active. Good for him. But it was really tough. Sometimes there's people that are hard to coach, and those people injure themselves by doing something that's not prescribed. It's sort of like if my doctor prescribed me medicine and I took maybe 3 pills instead of 1 pill every day, and then I go to the doctor, I'm like, hey, your medicine didn't work. He'd be like, dude, you didn't do the medicine right. You didn't do what I prescribed.
Right, correct. Follow the instructions. Yes.
And I tell you what, that CrossFit is really...
Don't be Bob.
Yeah, don't be Bob. Don't be Bob. What I always think about that meme from Dwight at The Office, from The Office, where he says, whenever I think, would an idiot do that thing, I don't do that thing, or something like that. It's great. But I think CrossFit does train their coaches to be very, very mindful, very, very on top of helping athletes stay safe, and really good coaches. And believe me, I get to drop into dozens of gyms a year, dozens, and I do see 90% of the gyms, I'm impressed. The coaches are on it. It's amazing. Like they're really doing it. There are every once in a while I drop into a gym and I'm like, the coaches aren't super invested. And I don't like to see that. but it's not my business. And
Hmm.
so yeah,
Right.
in any
Right.
kind of situation,
Yeah,
there's
but
going to be
you're
some.
actually out there on the road
Yeah.
more than myself. But we have a number of members who travel a lot for work, and they're always looking to drop in
Yep.
wherever they can,
Yep.
and they come back with some experiences too.
Yep.
Some good, some maybe not so good.
Yep.
But that's back circling back to that model where the strongest will survive and
Yep.
thrive,
Yep.
for sure. But and I think the more education that you impart upon the coaches, this circles back to the what we started out with Don's comment. So how is he going to drive the number of members?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to increase the education. We're going to push the foundations course. We're going to continue to make sure our coaches are as prepared as they can be to coach our members.
Yeah.
So the uninformed, back to what we were started to talk about, the uninformed are going to always throw stones. Just step inside a gym, see what's happening, see the work that's taking place in the responsible manner. And I think then you might change your opinion without blasting, hey, CrossFit is dangerous. You should never do that
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. And I think that's great advice. Just if you're looking to get into CrossFit and you're concerned about the risk factors, just know that if you get off the couch to start to train for a 5K, if you get off the couch, you're putting yourself at risk. But the risk that you take is worth it. The benefits of being healthy, the benefits of being able to get healthy enough to do whatever you want to do in life is worth it. And try to find a good gym. If you feel good there, if they're coaching you, they're letting you know constantly about or constantly focusing on your form, your development. That's great. And you're never locked into a gym. You can always change and find a gym. You also have to take personal responsibility. You have to pay attention to your body. And if you find yourself doing something that is causing you harm, then you dig in and figure out what's going on. If you got some knee pain from a previous injury, well, let's figure out or talk to a coach at your gym, like, hey, I've got this knee pain. What can I do to help? These people, most coaches are like so passionate about this that they will jump in and be happy to help. So be smart out there, guys. And CrossFit, is safer than sitting on the couch and developing metabolic diseases. We don't want those. We want to avoid those at all
Absolutely.
costs. Well, Rick, it's that time of the show where I'm looking at our show notes, and you don't have a pick of the week, my friend, in the show notes. I've got one, so I'm going to let you think on it. I'm going to let you think about one for a minute.
Okay,
And
you got it.
I will jump into my pick of the week. So every once in a while, I just look at something on my desk that is one of the most important elements of my desk. So I have video lights on my desk. I have a camera. I have an iPad. I have an iMac or whatever. I have all these things on my desk. But my favorite thing is this little whiteboard that I have that fits just in front of my keyboard. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes to an Amazon link for this. So you could actually envision this thing, but it's about 12 inches wide, about 8 inches deep, and it's on a slant. If I open the cover to it, there's little like storage compartments. If I close the cover, it's a whiteboard, and I take all my notes throughout the day on this whiteboard. I have my to-do list on this whiteboard. It is the coolest thing that I am having a very hard time explaining verbally. But if I look at, so what I'm going to do in the show notes, I'm going to link this to Amazon.
Okay.
It's like $30, but oh my gosh, like this thing is a life changer for me. It's my favorite little toy. And I spend lots of things on little toys, little productivity improvements in my life. But this little whiteboard on my desk is, it's the nuts. It's amazing. So Rick,
I like that.
you got one? Did you come up with one?
Yes. You're going to laugh because there is no link to this one. Let's put it that way. It's not a tip. It's what got me through yesterday. It's got what got me through Murph. Again, we had beautiful weather. However, it started to get warm, as you'd expect. All I can say is my tip is if you're going to do Murph, make sure you have cold, iced towels handy. I had it over my back of my neck, had it over my, inside around my shoulders for the first mile run, within reach for the work that you're doing inside after that, and then grabbed another ice cold towel for the second mile run. Just helps keep you a little cooler, I think. Again, no link, just take a towel and get it wet and get it cold. And I think of Murph, and that's just how I think of getting through it.
Yeah.
With addition to sucking down about every water bottle that you can find during it all. And during a regular workout or regular training session, I don't find myself going over to a water bottle hardly at all. But something about the mentality of Murph, and it's a sustained effort for as long as it takes you to get through it. You need some hydration, and you certainly need to keep your body temperature cooler. So
very true.
Worked for me. That's my tip.
I'll tell you, at the CrossFit Games in 2019, there was this long chipper. It started with an 800-meter run, and then 30 reps of a bunch of different things, and then another 800-meter run. And as I was getting ready to head out, a teenager came by because they had just finished the workout. It was so hot outside. He was like, "Hey, Grub, take a water bottle, put it out there on your chest piece, your little thing that says that your name on it. Put a water bottle out there. When you head out on that second 800-meter run, dump that water on your head." And I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." So as I was getting through these 30 different things, I had this 800-meter run to do at the end, and I got to it first. I dumped the water on my head, and I was a new man. Instantly rejuvenated. Like, it gave me a shock. I had adrenaline. It felt so good.
See?
I busted through that 800-meter run, and I believe that was actually my first event win in my CrossFit Games history. So thank you, anonymous teenager that said, "Hey,
teenager,
some kid, like, I don't
teenager
know,
athlete.
random." Yeah, it's great. So
see, it's the little things like that on a sustained, effort that really make a difference.
Really does.
Besides the physiological changes of maybe lowering your body temperature a few degrees, it's just as much mental as anything else.
That's that little reward. Well, Rick, we come to the end of another episode. I appreciate you, my friend. To those that are listening, we want to thank you for tuning in to the Masters in Motion podcast. If you found this episode to be helpful, we would be so grateful if you could take a quick moment to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or your preferred podcast app. Your support helps us reach more listeners and grow our Masters community. Until next time, get bolder, not older. See ya.